Well, hello everyone and welcome to the Econobox garage. In this week's episode I'm going to continue working on the rear valance panel and hopefully we'll get something welded back on the car. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy this week's video. In a previous video I got the template made to recreate the bottom end of that inner wheel arch. I'll put a link to that video above just in case you missed it. And then these are the metal pieces that I've cut out and bent to shape. So the first task in this episode is to be welding these pieces together. I'll be using a method I learned on a channel called Fabricating, and I'll put a link in the description below to the video that I learned this method from. His videos have proven to be very helpful throughout this build with the different ways of welding things and what have you, and I'd highly recommend you go have a look. And as I said, I'll put a link in the description below. So here I've welded up the first two pieces together, and I've filled the inside of that with weld. You can see I left it wider than it has to be, and then got weld along the overlap through here as well. And the idea with this is you've got lots of metal in that angle to be able to grind this back and still have lots of metal left. Rather than try to weld the two edges together, with the overlap you get, you're adding metal on both sides, and it gives you a lot to play with when you're going to grind it back. Well, I've got the second piece welded on here, and you can see I've got a bead on this side, and a bead on the inside of that. And here's the first piece I welded on, and you can see I've ground it back to a nice edge, and there's still some bead left on the inside. I'm not too worried about getting all of that out, because that's going to be basically hidden moving forward. So I'll just clean up the weld on this side, and I'll just get a nice edge on this corner here, and then it's almost ready to weld in the car. So now that I have my patch piece made to replace this lower leg of the inner wheel arch, I'm just going to mark where I'm going to cut this relative to the panel, and then get that ready to weld in. And if you recall in an earlier video, these marks are to the bottom corner of the quarter panel itself. Those are going to be a little different from the wheel arch. So I'll do another set of measurements to locate this point here so that I can get the patch piece in the correct spot. Well, there's the old piece that's been cut off from there. And I've tidied up this edge, and then here's the new piece that's going to go on, but it looks like I've made it a little bit too wide. You can see by that mark there. I'm going to have to trim that and re-weld that edge back on there, but other than that I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. So I'm fairly happy with the fit of the back edge of the boot floor to the lower valance panel. So the next step is to install the overrider reinforcing brackets that go in. So there's two of these, and they go into the 3 bolt holes there on the floor and the one into here. I'll get those bolted into place, and that'll hold everything nice and solid while I clean up the back edge of this lip here in order to make it so I can weld it to the rear valance. there's that reinforcing panel installed. I've used new hardware, but these aren't the correct length bolts for this yet. So I've got those all tightened up on both sides. And normally this bolt here and the back two in here are the ones that hold on the brackets for the rear overriders. And the same on this side over here. So that's stiffened up the back quite a bit. So now those are in place. I'll move on to the next step. In case you're interested, I got these panels from Ashley Hinton in the UK, and I'll put a link to them in the description below. So I spent quite a bit of time fettling with this back valance panel, and I wasn't happy with how the joint was working out between the Cleco fasteners. These have been great for holding the new panel into place, but I was finding that the pieces weren't quite lining up as they should. So I decided to use some butt weld clamps. Now this is what one of those butt weld clamps looks like, and basically what you're seeing on the outside is this portion here, and on the inside, on the other side, there's a hole in that little piece, and this pin goes right in there. Now, the challenge with this, in this situation, is you can't really get your hand in there behind to put that pin through. So basically what I did is I pushed it through as far as I could without it coming out, put a piece of tape on this side to hold this into place, and then from inside the boot I used essentially a magnet on a stick to maneuver that pin into the hole it goes into. Now, as you can imagine, that took a bit of time, but I managed to get these four in, and it's made this joint here now nice and even between the old and the new. So I'm going to clean that all up, and that'll allow me to get things welded into place. So I'll just tack this in either side of these butt clamps and make any adjustments I have to. Then I can take the Clecos out, cut these little flanges off, and move from there. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. I didn't get quite as much done as I'd hoped, as things don't always go according to plan. Next week, if all goes well, I'll be welding stuff back in, and I think I'll probably just rebuild that patch panel for the inner wheel arch at the back there. So please be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that little bell icon so that you'll get notified when the next videos come out. My name is Ian, this is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.